I found a hotel key card in my wife's car that she had no business having. Instead of confronting her about the affair, I did something she never expected. I disappeared with our daughter for 2 years. When she finally tracked us down, her words left me speechless. My name is Dane Collins. I'm 41 years old, and I've been running Collins Well Drilling for the past 12 years here in rural Montana. Started the company after I got tired of working for other people who didn't understand the craft. There's something honest about drilling for water. You either hit it or you don't. No gray areas, no lies, just results. I met Tessa at a county fair 8 years ago. She was working the information booth for some environmental group, trying to educate folks about water conservation. Beautiful woman with auburn hair and green eyes that could stop traffic. What caught my attention wasn't just her looks, though. It was the way she talked about protecting our natural resources. Made sense to me. A man who drills wells understands the value of clean water better than most. We got married 2 years later, and Tessa moved into my place just outside Billings. She got a job with the county planning department, something about environmental impact assessments. Good steady work that paid decent and gave her purpose. 3 years after that, our daughter Hazel came along. Best day of my life, holding that little girl for the first time. For the first few years, everything was smooth sailing. Tessa would handle the books for my business when things got busy, and I'd help her with research projects when she needed someone who understood the technical side of groundwater. We were a team, partners in everything. Then about 18 months ago, things started changing. Subtle at first, the kind of changes you notice but don't want to admit mean anything. Tessa started going to this new gym downtown, said her friend Rachel from work had recommended it. Fair enough. A woman's got a right to stay in shape. But then came the password changes. Our computer had always been open between us. No secrets, no locked phones. Suddenly Tessa was changing passwords on everything. Her email, her phone, even her social media accounts that she barely used before. Why the sudden security upgrade? I asked her one evening as she typed away on her laptop, angling the screen away from me. Tessa Collins replied without looking up, "Oh, you know how it is. All those news stories about identity theft. Just being careful." Made sense, I suppose. But it was the way she said it. Too casual, too rehearsed. Like she'd been practicing that answer. Then there were the shopping trips. Designer workout clothes. Expensive perfume. Lingerie I never saw her wear at home. When I mentioned it, she'd laugh it off. "A girl's got to feel good about herself, Dane," Tessa would say. "Besides, I'm making good money now. Can't I spend some of it on myself?" She wasn't wrong about the money. Her environmental consulting had taken off, and she was pulling in more than she ever had. But something felt off about the whole thing. The real kicker was when she started talking about her new gym friends. All divorced women, according to Tessa. They'd go out for drinks after their workouts, she said. Nothing wrong with that, except she never invited me to meet any of them. Looking back now, I should have trusted my gut from the beginning. The first real alarm bell went off on a Tuesday morning in March. I was loading my truck for a job site when I noticed Tessa's car pulling out of the driveway earlier than usual. She worked flexible hours at the county office, so early mornings weren't necessarily odd. But something made me glance at the dashboard clock, 6:47 a.m. Her gym didn't open until 7. I tried to shake it off as I drove to the Henderson Ranch to finish their well installation. But the thought kept gnawing at me like a drill bit hitting unexpected rock. When I got home that evening, I asked about it casually. "Saw you heading out early this morning," I said while helping 3-year-old Hazel with her dinner. "New gym schedule." Tessa Collins barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, I had to stop by the office first. Some paperwork needed to get filed before the county meeting." Simple explanation. Made perfect sense. So why did it feel like she'd rehearsed that answer too? The next few weeks brought more irregularities. Phone calls she'd take in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. When I'd ask who called, it was always work stuff or Rachel from the gym. But I'd been married to this woman for 6 years. I knew her work voice, and this wasn't it. Then came the night that really got my attention. I was in the garage organizing my drill bits when Tessa's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs giving Hazel a bath, so I glanced at it without thinking, force of habit from the days when we answered each other's phones freely. The message preview showed a name I didn't recognize. "Looking forward to tomorrow. Same place." When Tessa came downstairs, I mentioned it. "Someone named Marcus texted you about meeting tomorrow." Tessa's face went through about 3 different expressions in 2 seconds before settling on annoyed. That's the new environmental consultant the county hired. We're meeting about the watershed project. She grabbed her phone and deleted the message without reading it fully. I wish people wouldn't text me personal reminders for work meetings. So unprofessional. But here's the thing about drilling wells. You learn to read signs most people miss. The way water behaves underground, the subtle changes in soil composition, the sounds your equipment makes when it hits different materials. And after 12 years of marriage, I knew how to read Tessa's signs too. The way her voice pitched higher when she was nervous. How she'd touch her neck when she wasn't telling the whole truth. The little pause before she answered, like she was selecting words from prepared script. All those signs were flashing red that night. I started paying closer attention after that. Not snooping, just observing. The kind of careful watching you do when you're trying to locate an underground water source. Patient, methodical, waiting for the right indicators. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. And it wasn't good. A man in my line of work doesn't make assumptions without solid evidence. When you're drilling a well, you don't guess where the water is. You study the land, test the soil, and follow the science. Same principle applies to marriage, I figured. So I did what any smart businessman would do. I started keeping track. I bought a small notebook and started documenting things. Times Tessa left the house, when she came back, who she claimed to be meeting. Nothing paranoid or obsessive, just facts. The kind of record-keeping that had made my business successful. Within 2 weeks, I had a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Tessa would leave for her extended gym sessions at 6:30 a.m. But on the days I drove past that fitness center on my way to job sites, her car wasn't in the parking lot. Last Thursday, I decided to take direct action. I told Tessa I had an early job in Bozeman and would be gone all day. Instead, I parked my truck at a truck stop with a clear view of our street and waited. At 6:28 a.m., Tessa's car pulled out of our driveway. I followed at a distance, staying back far enough to avoid detection. She didn't head toward the gym. Instead, she drove to a coffee shop downtown, the expensive kind with imported beans and fancy pastries. Through the window, I watched her sit at a corner table, checking her phone repeatedly. At 6:45, a man walked in. Tall, dark hair, expensive suit. Definitely not the type who worked with his hands. I watched them embrace. Not a handshake, not a professional greeting. A full embrace, the kind reserved for people who know each other well. They sat close, leaning in toward each other, her hand covering his on the table. Every gesture screamed intimacy. When she laughed at something he said, she threw her head back the same way she used to laugh at my jokes during our early dating days. The man reached across the table and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Tessa leaned into his touch like it was the most natural thing in the world. My wife was acting like a woman in love, but not with her husband. I sat in my truck for 45 minutes, watching my marriage dissolve before my eyes. They shared pastries, held hands across the table, and when they finally got up to leave, he kissed her forehead like they'd done this 1,000 times before. When they walked outside together, I started my engine and followed them to the parking garage of a downtown hotel. I watched them enter together, her hand in his. That image burned itself into my memory like a brand on cowhide. That night, I did something I'd never done in 6 years of marriage. I went through Tessa's things while she was sleeping. Her purse sat on the dresser like it always did. Usually, I wouldn't even glance at it. But these weren't usual circumstances. Inside, tucked behind her wallet, I found a hotel key card. Plain white plastic, no hotel logo, just a magnetic strip. Tessa Collins worked 30 minutes from our house. She'd never needed a hotel room in her life. I photographed the card with my phone and put it back exactly where I found it. Then I checked her car. In the glove compartment, wedged behind the registration papers, I discovered a parking receipt from downtown Billings. Dated from last Tuesday, one of her supposed gym days. But that wasn't all. In the center console, under some loose change, I found a receipt from a jewelry store. Expensive place downtown that sold men's watches and cufflinks. The date was from 3 weeks ago, and the amount made my jaw clench. $400 for something I'd never seen her give to me. 2 more pieces of evidence that didn't match her story. The next morning, Tessa announced she was taking a weekend trip to Helena for a county environmental conference. She'd be leaving Friday afternoon and returning Sunday evening. Sounds educational, I said, keeping my voice neutral while scrambling eggs for Hazel's breakfast. Which hotel are they putting you up at? Oh, it's some boutique place near the Capitol, Tessa replied, not meeting my eyes while she packed her overnight bag. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Need me to pick you up on Sunday? Save you the parking fees? No, that's okay, she said quickly. The county's covering all expenses, and I might want to drive around Helena a bit before coming home. That Friday, after watching her car disappear down our long driveway, I made a phone call to my brother-in-law, who worked for the state environmental department. Hey, Mike, I said when he answered. Quick question about this weekend's conference in Helena. Tessa's attending, and I wanted to surprise her with flowers at the hotel. Mike Garrett paused for a long moment. Dane, there's no environmental conference in Helena this weekend. Our next state meeting isn't until October. The silence on the line felt heavier than my drill rig. Maybe I got the dates mixed up, I finally said. Thanks anyway. But I hadn't gotten anything mixed up. My wife had lied to me again, and now I had irrefutable proof. That evening, I called my old friend Blake Thorne. We'd been buddies since high school, and he ran a small investigation service for insurance companies and divorce attorneys. Blake, I said when he picked up, I need a favor, and it's not something I ever thought I'd be asking. Blake Thorne met me at Murphy's Tavern on the outskirts of Billings the next evening. We'd chosen the place because it was quiet, away from the usual crowd, and Blake knew the owner well enough to get us a private booth in the back. You look like hell, Dane, Blake said as he slid into the booth across from me, setting down 2 beers. Feel worse than I look, I replied, taking a long pull from the bottle. Thanks for meeting me on short notice. Blake Thorne leaned back in his seat, studying my face. In my line of work, when a married man calls sounding like you did, it usually means one thing. So let's cut to the chase. What's going on with Tessa? I told him everything. The early morning departures, the mysterious Marcus, the hotel key card, the non-existent conference in Helena. Blake listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a small pad he'd pulled from his jacket pocket. How long has this been going on? He asked when I finished. Best I can figure, about 4 months. Maybe longer. Blake Thorne tapped his pen against the notepad. You want my professional opinion? You've got enough circumstantial evidence to confirm what you already know. But if you're thinking about divorce proceedings, you'll need more concrete proof. What kind of proof? Photos, video, documented meetings. Something that leaves no room for interpretation or denial. He paused, studying my expression. The question is, how far are you willing to go to get it? I thought about 3-year-old Hazel, sleeping peacefully in her bedroom, trusting that her parents would protect her world. I thought about the business I'd built from nothing, the house we'd made into a home, the life I constructed based on what I thought was solid ground. As far as it takes, I said finally. Blake nodded like he'd expected that answer. All right, here's what we're going to do. I've got some equipment that can help us document her activities. Small GPS tracker, wireless cameras, that sort of thing. Nothing illegal, just tools to gather evidence. Won't that make me as bad as her? Dane, Blake said, his voice serious. She's already made the choice to destroy your marriage. You're just trying to protect yourself and your daughter from the fallout. We spent the next hour planning our approach. Blake would provide the technical equipment, and I would handle the surveillance when necessary. It felt like preparing for a military operation rather than investigating my own wife. One more thing, Blake said as we prepared to leave. Once we start this, there's no going back. You sure you're ready for whatever we might find? I thought about Tessa's laugh in that coffee shop, the way she'd leaned into another man's touch, the lies she'd told me with such practiced ease. I'm ready, I said. The opportunity came sooner than expected. 3 days later, Tessa announced another overnight trip, this time to Great Falls for a regional water quality seminar. I'll be back tomorrow evening, she said, kissing my forehead as she gathered her overnight bag. Take good care of our girl. Always do, I replied, watching her walk out the door for what would be the last time as my unsuspecting wife. I waited exactly 1 hour after her departure before putting Blake's plan into action. The GPS tracker he'd given me was smaller than a matchbox and magnetized to stick under her car's frame. But since she was already gone, I had to rely on old-fashioned detective work. I called the hotel where she claimed to be staying in Great Falls. No reservation under Tessa Collins or any variation of her name. Strike one. Next, I contacted the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. No water quality seminars scheduled for Great Falls that week. Strike 2. Strike 3 came when I decided to drive past that downtown hotel where I'd seen her enter with her mystery man. Her car was parked in the garage, 2 levels up, tucked between a Mercedes and a Lexus like she was trying to hide it. I sat in my truck across the street, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. My wife was 3 miles from our house, lying in bed with another man while telling me she was in Great Falls. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I went home, kissed my sleeping daughter goodnight, and started planning my exit. Not just an exit from the marriage, an exit from Tessa's life entirely. I spent hours thinking about what Blake had said regarding evidence and divorce proceedings. But the more I considered it, the more I realized I didn't want to drag this through courts. I didn't want to fight over custody or property division. I didn't want years of legal battles and bitter confrontations. I wanted something cleaner, more final. I wanted to disappear from Tessa's life so completely that she'd understand exactly what she'd thrown away. The next morning, while Tessa was presumably still at her fake conference, I started moving money. I transferred half of our joint savings into a new account in my name only. I called my business insurance company and updated my beneficiaries. I contacted my lawyer about setting up a trust fund for Hazel. When Tessa came home that evening, full of stories about water quality standards and networking opportunities, I listened to every lie with the patience of a man who knew exactly what he was going to do about them. "How was your seminar?" I asked over dinner. Tessa Collins smiled, that same practice smile. "Oh, you know how these things are. Lots of technical talk, but some useful information for our local projects. Learn anything interesting?" "Nothing you'd find exciting," she said, cutting Hazel's chicken into smaller pieces. "Mostly boring regulatory stuff." I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the trusting husband one last time. That night, after Tessa fell asleep, I went down to our basement workshop and found my old carving tools. I had work to do. The next morning, Tessa left for another gym session at 6:30 a.m. sharp. I watched her car disappear down our driveway, knowing it would be the last time I'd see her as my wife. I had everything planned down to the minute. First, I drove to the bank and withdrew cash from the account I'd set up. Enough to get Hazel and me started somewhere new. Then I stopped by my office and transferred all my business files to a secure cloud server, along with client contacts and project information. Collins Well Drilling could operate from anywhere with internet access. Blake Thorne was waiting at a truck stop outside Billings when I arrived at noon. "You sure about this, Dane?" he asked as we transferred Hazel's car seat to my truck. "Once you disappear, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure," I said, checking the straps on the seat. Tessa made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Blake handed me a new cell phone and a thick envelope. "Prepaid phone, untraceable, cash to get you started wherever you're going. And this," he pulled out a small device, "is a signal blocker. It'll keep anyone from tracking your truck's GPS for about 6 months. What do I owe you for all this?" Blake Thorne shook his head. "Consider it a wedding gift. 6 years too late, but better late than never." I picked up 3-year-old Hazel from her daycare that afternoon, telling them she wouldn't be back for a while due to a family emergency. She chattered excitedly about going on an adventure with Daddy, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. "Where are we going, Daddy?" Hazel asked as I buckled her into her car seat. "Somewhere special, sweetheart," I said, kissing her forehead. "Just you and me for a while." "What about Mommy?" "Mommy has some things she needs to figure out," I said carefully. "But don't worry. Daddy's going to take good care of you." Back at the house, I loaded the truck with everything that mattered: clothes, important documents, some of Hazel's favorite toys, and the photo albums from before everything went wrong. I left the furniture, the joint bank accounts, even my wedding ring. But I couldn't leave without making one final statement. In our bedroom, I found the longest nail I could locate in my toolbox. The bedroom wall where Tessa hung her collection of inspirational quotes seemed like the perfect canvas for my message. I pressed the nail into the drywall and began carving, each letter deliberate and deep. Every lie has a price. When I finished, I took my wedding ring and hammered the nail through it, pinning it to the wall right below the words like a period at the end of a sentence. By 4 p.m., Hazel and I were on the road, heading north toward Canada. I had contacts in Alberta from my drilling days, good men who wouldn't ask too many questions about an American wanting to start over. As Billings disappeared in my rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Tessa came home that evening to an empty house and a message that would haunt her for years. I know this because Blake called me 3 days later to tell me what happened. He'd been monitoring the situation from a distance, making sure there were no immediate complications from my disappearance. She found your message around 6 p.m., Blake told me as I sat in a roadside diner somewhere outside Calgary. Neighbors heard her screaming from 2 houses away. What did she do? Blake Thorne's voice carried a mix of satisfaction and pity. Call the police first. Reported you and Hazel missing. But when they saw your message and realized you'd taken your own daughter voluntarily, they told her it was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Then what? Then she called her boyfriend. Had a screaming match with him right there in your driveway. Turns out this Marcus character got cold feet when he realized you'd found out. Told her he wasn't ready for the complications of a divorced woman with a child. I felt a bitter satisfaction hearing that. The man she destroyed her marriage for had abandoned her the moment things got difficult. There's more, Blake continued. She's been calling everyone we know, trying to find out where you went. Even contacted your business clients, thinking you might have told one of them something. Did you tell her anything? Not a word. As far as I'm concerned, you and Hazel just vanished into thin air. Over the next few weeks, Blake gave me regular updates. Tessa had hired a private investigator, but my trail had gone cold at the Canadian border. She tried to access our joint bank accounts, only to discover I'd legally withdrawn my share before leaving. She'd even gone to the police multiple times, but since I was Hazel's father and had broken no laws, there was nothing they could do. She's falling apart, Blake told me during one call. Lost her job because she can't focus on work. Spends most of her time driving around town looking for your truck, even though she knows you're long gone. What about Marcus? Disappeared faster than smoke in a windstorm. Heard he transferred to his company's Seattle office to get away from the drama. I looked out the window of the small cabin I'd rented near Edmonton, watching Hazel build snowmen in the yard. She'd adapted to our new life with the resilience that only children possess, treating our move like an extended camping trip. How long are you planning to stay gone? Blake asked. As long as it takes, I said. Tessa wanted to play games with our marriage. Now she can live with an empty house and figure out what she really lost. It would be 2 years before I'd see her again. And when that day came, the words she spoke would leave me speechless. 2 years had passed when Tessa finally tracked us down. Hazel was 5 now, speaking with a slight Canadian accent, and completely at home in our new life. I'd built a successful drilling business in Alberta, and we'd found peace in the wide-open spaces where nobody asked questions about her past. I was at a construction site outside Calgary when I saw her. Tessa Collins stood beside a rental car, looking older and worn down by 2 years of consequences. Her auburn hair was shorter, streaked with gray I didn't remember. She'd lost weight, not in a healthy way, but like someone who'd forgotten how to take care of herself. "Hello, Dane," she said when I walked over, my work boots crunching on the gravel. "Tessa." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "How did you find us?" "It took me 18 months and 3 private investigators," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You covered your tracks well. What do you want?" She looked toward the construction trailer, where Hazel was coloring at a desk, my foreman's wife watching her while I worked. "I want to see my daughter. I want to explain what happened. I want us to be a family again." I studied her face, looking for signs of the woman I'd once loved. All I saw was someone who'd learned too late what her choices had cost her. "How did that work out with Marcus?" I asked. Tessa's face fell. "He left me the night you disappeared. Said he couldn't handle the drama of a custody battle." She paused, gathering herself. "I lost my job, Dane. My reputation. Everything fell apart when you left." "Good." The word came out harder than I'd intended, but I didn't regret it. "Dane, please," she said, taking a step closer. "I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But Hazel needs her mother. And I need my family back." That's when she said the words that left me speechless. "I'm pregnant, Dane. It's yours." From that last night before you left. I stood there, frozen, as the implications hit me. In all my planning, in all my anger, I'd never considered this possibility. "The baby's due in 3 months," Tessa continued, her voice breaking. "I've been trying to raise our child alone, just like you've been raising Hazel. But I can't do it anymore. I need you. Our children need both their parents." I looked at Hazel through the trailer window, then at the woman who destroyed our marriage, standing in front of me with tears streaming down her face, carrying what might be my child. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't know what to say. I stood there in that construction site parking lot for what felt like an eternity, processing Tessa's words. Pregnant. With my child. The timing matched our last night together before I discovered her betrayal. Prove it, I said finally. Tessa pulled out a folder from her purse. Medical records, ultrasound photos, DNA test results from the father she was certain about. Everything documented and official. I know you don't trust me anymore, she said. I know I destroyed that right. But this baby is yours, Dane. And Hazel deserves to know her little brother. Brother, Lucas. I named him Lucas Collins. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I kept your name. Even after everything, I kept hoping you'd come home. I called Hazel over to meet her mother. My daughter approached cautiously, recognizing Tessa, but uncertain after 2 years apart. Hi, sweetie, Tessa said, kneeling down at Hazel's level. I've missed you so much. Hazel Collins looked up at me for guidance. Daddy, is this really Mommy? Yes, sweetheart. This is Mommy. What followed were the hardest negotiations of my life. Not because I wanted revenge anymore, but because I had to think about what was best for all of us. Hazel, the unborn baby, even Tessa. Here's how this works, I told her. You move here to Alberta. Start over completely. No contact with anyone from your old life. Especially Marcus or anyone associated with him. He's already gone, Dane. Married his secretary and moved to Europe. Good. Second condition, we don't get back together. We co-parent, nothing more. You rebuild your life here, I continue building mine, and we focus on our children. I understand, Tessa said quietly. I lost the right to be your wife when I chose someone else over our family. Third condition, complete transparency. No passwords. No secret meetings, no lies. Ever. If I catch you in even one deception, you'll never see either child again. She nodded, accepting terms that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. 3 months later, Lucas was born. Holding my son for the first time, seeing Hazel's excitement about being a big sister, I realized something had fundamentally changed. Not forgiveness. That would take years, if it ever came at all. But acceptance that our family would never look like what I'd originally planned. Tessa kept her word. She found work as an environmental consultant for the provincial government, lived in a small apartment across town, and earned back small pieces of trust through consistent actions rather than empty promises. The carved message still haunted her dreams, she told me months later. Every lie has a price, had become her daily reminder of what deception had cost her, her marriage, her home, 2 years with her daughter, and any chance of the life she'd once taken for granted. As for me, I learned that sometimes the strongest thing a man can do isn't holding on, but knowing when to let go. And sometimes, if you're willing to disappear completely, the people who truly matter will find their way back to what really counts.